Hey everyone, Xant here. Quick clarification on my last video about AI proficiency. Turns out I shouldn't get into gambling. AI proficiency actually reduces the cost of the AI pilot up to a maximum of 10 points. 1 point per proficiency level. My apologies for the incorrect assumption. Moving on. I realized that even though I had done a pseudo impressions video on this game, I actually forgot to include anything about parts and what's good to start with. It's rather helpful to know what to reroll for, especially in a game like this where there's so many parts and things that you have to collect. Since I've cleared the story and practically all the free missions, on normal anyways, I think I have enough information to really help you get on your feet. Before we get the ball rolling though, do remember this is a gacha game first and foremost. With the lack of a guaranteed system for the gacha, there's no way to ensure that you're going to get a specific part or pilot. I'll also include that this is just a general guide, don't take it as gospel. Last thing, I finished writing the script and doing all the recording literally the day before the new content comes out, so I'll be doing another video when that drops to see if any of the new content is worth rerolling for. Okay, first, I should explain why some parts are better than others. Natural 4-star parts have a much higher stat ceiling than parts you tune up. In my last video, I said it was a game of favorites, and I stand by that. Just understand that there are inherent gaps in power between parts. Personally, I'd rather play a gimped unit that I absolutely love than a meta unit I utterly hate. Then again, that's just how I usually play my games, fun over meta. The growth indicator on parts is a good visual representation of what you should expect from the parts that you're using. You'll have to open the info window on an item to see this. There's also another thing that I should talk about on the parts information screen here. So at the top, you'll see parameters with a growth icon. I've seen it go to a maximum of 3, though it may go higher later on. This is the overall stat growth of the part, and pretty much the potential of the part if we're going to assign a term to it. There also exists EX skills on some parts, and if the part doesn't have an EX skill, then it'll have part traits. These also have a growth indicator, and it can be different than the parameter potential. To increase the level of an EX skill or a part trait, you require a copy of the part, and you must use it in upgrading. The max level of EX skills and part traits can also be increased by tuning up the part, so more stars means a higher level ceiling pretty much. Future events, or maybe even quality of life updates, may add a way to increase these levels outside of rolling duplicates, but for now, all you're able to do is get dupes. Now, this is just my opinion, but getting duplicates isn't really necessary right now. I was able to clear the entire story and all the free missions on normal without leveling up EX or traits at all, so for reroll purposes, don't worry about dupes that much. Now, as to what to reroll for. It's an odd can of worms, really, because there's a lot of available parts, and there's a ton of combinations available. Due to the fact that you can have 8 parts and a pilot, there's a lot of variables at play in making a good machine. If we're being objective, building an entire mobile suit of natural 4-star parts will yield the best overall stat pool, and at low levels and when you're starting off, you pretty much just want those numbers. Problem is, that's highly unrealistic to expect even with the 17% rates on 4-star parts. My opinion on this, and from what I've heard from other people that were also rerolling with me a few days ago, there's a few things that you should really keep an eye out for. So the first part would be the new Gundam wings. It's the only 4-star funnel system in the game. And for those unaware, funnels are the term used for weapons that can detach and autonomously fly around the enemy, zipping around, opening fire on them. Think of funnels like a constant DPS ticker. You can just fire and forget about them. These come packaged with A- Pierce, which means they practically ignore the target's beam defense. Since the funnels also clip through terrain, and the user can freely move, shoot, attack, whatever, while your funnels go and harass the enemy, good luck hiding from them or stopping the damage rampage. Since they're omnidirectional as well, they're extremely difficult to dodge or shield against. It's kinda silly how good this part is, actually. The next part would be the new Gundam arms. Quite interesting, really. These come with a Beam Saber EX skill, which means if you also have a strong saber, you're gonna really dish out some damage. Beyond the EX skill, it also has the word tag Ace Exclusive. and if you manage to activate it, it boosts your shot attack, so all your ranged stuff, by 10% while it's active. The next one would be the new Gundam chest, 17% boost to beam ranged weapons. Need I say more for anyone that uses beam guns? So moving away from body parts, the Gundam beam rifle. It's the strongest beam rifle in the game right now, due to the EX skill that it has. Last shooting will shred through HP like nobody's business, but that's not all. It also heals the armor of your allies and increases everyone's range damage as a buff at the end. The next weapon is the new Gundam beam rifle. It has beefy max stats, frankly, doing 33% more range damage than the Gundam beam rifle. It has no EX skill though, but it does come with a passive that reduces the opponent's strong melee damage by 17% if you have more than 40% HP. In case you forgot, that's the extra hit on the end of a melee combo. Arguably, the passive isn't that useful, but I do like the raw stats over EX skills, especially since you can only slot 3 EX skills at a time. So we'll move away from ranged weapons and start talking about the melee ones. The first is the Gundam Beam Sword. It has the second highest melee damage in the saber category, but the passive is what you want this for. If your machine is Technique, or in other words it has 5 or more parts with the Technique modifier on them, you get 10% crit boost on melee attacks. The next would be the Barbados' Mace. It's the strongest lance in the game, and it has the same raw attack stats as the Barbados Sword, but it also has an EX skill on top of it, which, well, you beat the crap out of your target, and then it increases range defense for all your allies when it's done. It's pretty good. Next would be the Barbados' Longsword. It's the strongest sword in the game in terms of raw stats. It also has the word tag Protag, which boosts melee by 10% if it's active. And if you have the job license of Infighter, it gets another 10% boost to melee damage. It's pretty nasty under the right conditions. So this last one's a little different than the other ones in the list, the new Gundam Head. This one will only be useful if you have an EX skill that uses beam type damage. And it just so happens that the new Gundam Wings are an EX that use beam. It'll boost the damage output by 30%, so if you somehow manage to get this and the wings, have fun. So now that we've gone over the best parts, let's rank them, I guess, subjectively as hell. In terms of ranged importance, it would probably look something like this. The new Gundam Wings, then the new Gundam Head, but only if you have the wings as well, then the Gundam Beam Rifle, the new Gundam Beam Rifle, and then the new Gundam Chest. The head is only useful if you have the wings, since the other Beam EX skills aren't as potent as the funnels, at least in my opinion. The chest is also super important due to the huge beam damage increase, but if you don't have a good beam weapon, it's not going to help you much. Between the Gundam Beam Rifle and the new Gundam Beam Rifle, the Gundam Beam Rifle will help more due to the EX skill, but which one you decide to go with is up to you. Melee, on the other hand, would look something like this. You'd have the Barbados' Mace at the top, then the sword, then the Gundam Beam Sword, and then the new Gundam Arms. The Mace is great due to the EX skill and the raw stats that it comes with. The sword, Barbados' that is, has slightly higher raw melee damage than the Gundam Beam Sword, so it's up to you if you'd rather go with raw stats or lock yourself down to having your machine be Technique to maximize the beam saber. The arms are the lowest on the list, as the EX skill it has is only really useful with a good melee weapon, much like how the ranged needs a good gun to be paired to the chest. If we're being honest, what's best depends on your roles and style on top of your AI. Playing with what the gacha gives you is going to probably be mandatory for most of us in this. Chances are though, with the limited pool size and parts you'll have starting off, you won't be able to make an optimized machine for quite a while. You can always fill out tags or attribute slots with lower rarity parts until you get better ones, right? There's no rush. I'd say aim for at least one of the parts I listed, but I would prioritize the wings. The mace or Gundam Beam Rifle would be an ideal backup part. I did hear some people mention that the new Gundam Bazooka is also great because of its EX skill, but since I never got it and no one I know got it or tried it out, I'm kind of at the mercy of rumors on that. Beyond parts, if you're worried about what pilot is the best, right now Amuro Ray would be the top pick. He's kitted for ranged attacks, and he has an 8% reload speed on beam weapons passive on top of the long shooter, or long range shooter, whatever it's termed as, job license. The other 4-star pilots aren't bad, stats and all, but the passives on them don't really mesh with the reroll parts. Just make sure if you do use Amuro with a machine that you want him to use ranged fire with, you change his job license. Those extra boosts are actually worth it. I changed mine to long range so I could really abuse the funnels and my beam rifle, and I ended up getting over 2,000 power from it. Now, the other purple parts that I didn't list aren't bad. The stats alone make them worth keeping. But this is just so you know what's kind of considered the best right now. Hopefully, this has given you some kind of idea what you should be looking for. And like I said before, I'll be doing a video when the new patch goes live on the new content that got added, and if I think the new parts are good enough to reroll for, then I'll amend this reroll list. Maybe I'll even make a pilot specific one, since this covered parts but not so much pilots. I should note that when the patch goes live, which is 8 PM PDT on the 6th, Amuro and the new Gundam will be moved to the standard capsules, and they're not going to be on Raid Up anymore, so obtaining them will be a little bit harder. Anyways, peace, I'll see you in the next video.